The titanium hull of the Acheron 4 core pod did not stay silent. At 7 miles below the surface of the Pacific, the ocean did not splash. It squeezed. It pressed against the 2-inch thick metal sphere with a relentless force of 8 tons per square inch, making the structure emit a constant, high-pitched, metallic whine, a mechanical scream that had become the background music of Abigail Reyes's life. Abby sat in the pilot's harness, her face illuminated by the amber glow of the diagnostic consoles. She was a senior deep-sea engineer, halfway through a solo 3-week shift monitoring an automated boring drill. The massive, diamond-tipped rig was anchored outside, biting deep into the bedrock of the Mariana Trench to harvest rare earth minerals from the planet's mantle. Log entry 0 to 30 hours, Abby said, her voice sounding flat and tiny inside the cramped, claustrophobic sphere. She spoke into her headset, recording her daily audio log. Drill depth is currently at 4,000 meters below the seabed. Core temperature is nominal. Pressure hull integrity at 98%. The whine in the starboard bulkhead is slightly louder tonight, but within tolerance. Just another day at the bottom of the world. She reached for a bulb of water, but paused when the floorboards violently shuddered. A deep, hollow clunk echoed through the hull, followed by the sudden, frantic screaming of the drill's hydraulic pumps. On the main monitor, the drilling RPM spiked to maximum, then dropped to 0. "Come on, don't strip a gear now," Abby muttered, her fingers flying across the touch interface. She pulled up the telemetry data. The drill hadn't hit a pocket of dense granite. The readouts showed that the drill bit had dropped 6 meters in a fraction of a second. It had broken through the solid crust of the earth into a massive, completely unmapped, hollow cavern miles beneath the ocean floor. Abby clicked her tongue, pulling up the acoustic seismic sensors to check for tectonic stability. Let's see what we opened. The seismic monitor didn't display the jagged, chaotic spikes of shifting rock. Instead, the digital wave pattern smoothed out into a rhythmic, mathematical cadence. Thump, thump. A 3-second pause. Thump, thump. Abby frowned, leaning closer to the monitor. She adjusted her headset, routing the raw acoustic feed from the external hydrophones directly into her ears. The sound was incredibly low, a sub-audible vibration that she felt in her chest before she heard it. Thump, thump. It wasn't the sound of grinding stone or escaping gas. It was wet, heavy. It sounded exactly like a massive, slow-beating heart echoing up from the dark mouth of the borehole. Then, a new sound bled into the feed, a harsh, metallic rasping that perfectly mimicked the rhythmic whine of her own titanium hull. Abby's hand froze. What the hell is that? She turned to the capsule's only link to the surface, a low-frequency, text-only teletype feed wired through the thick steel tether cable that rose 7 miles to the support ship above. She quickly typed a message into the console. Acheron 4 to surface. Drill has broken into a hollow pocket. Extreme acoustic anomaly detected from the borehole. Requesting permission to retract the drill bit and abort. For 2 minutes, the teletype machine was silent, save for the faint, rhythmic ticking of its internal gears. Then, the keys began to clack violently, spitting out text in jerky, frantic bursts. Abby read the words aloud as they appeared on the paper strip. Surface to Acheron 4. Reyes, do not retract the drill. We are... The text garbled into a string of nonsensical symbols before clearing up. Do not retract. The seismic pulse did not come from rock. You opened a lung. It is climbing the tether. Abort the hoist. Cut the tether. Abby stared at the paper strip, her blood running cold. cut the tether. If I cut the tether, I can't get back up. Before she could type a response, a massive concussive jolt rocked the Acheron 4. The entire titanium pod tilted sharply to the left, the metal screaming as the external structural mounts groaned under a sudden, colossal weight. Abby was thrown against her harness, her headset ripping free from the console. Outside, the pitch-black, ink-like water of the trench suddenly began to churn. Abby lunged across the cabin and looked out the small, multi-layered acrylic viewport. The high-intensity external floodlights cut through the abyss, illuminating the thick steel tether cable that stretched straight up toward the surface. The cable wasn't straight anymore. It was vibrating violently, being yanked downward into the dark mouth of the borehole in massive, rhythmic jerks. Thump, thump. The sound wasn't just in her headset anymore. It was vibrating directly through the titanium hull, loud enough to make the water bulb on her desk ripple. Abby scrambled back to the main console. "Pressure gauges," she breathed, her heart hammering. "If the hull is buckling, I'm dead." She looked at the external pressure indicators. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. The pressure wasn't rising. It was rapidly dropping. 7,000 pounds, 5,000, 3,000. "That's impossible," she whispered to the empty room. "The water pressure can't just disappear." She looked back out the viewport. The external floodlights suddenly caught a massive, pale distortion sliding up from the borehole. It wasn't an animal. It was a mountain of smooth, slick, rubbery flesh, completely devoid of features, sliding out of the earth like a colossal worm. It didn't swim. It coiled. Abby watched in pure horror as the massive entity wrapped itself entirely around the Acheron 4 core pod, coiling tightly around the titanium sphere like a constrictor. The external floodlights flickered and died one by one as they were smothered by the creature's pale hide. The pressure gauges dropped to absolute zero. The ocean wasn't pressing on the pod anymore. The creature was. The teletype machine gave one final, desperate clack, printing a single line across the paper before the power grid failed completely. Tether snapped. Surface ship lost. May God save you. The amber lights in the cabin snapped off, plunging Abby into pitch blackness. The high-pitched, metallic whine of the titanium hull, the sound she had hated for weeks, suddenly stopped. The absolute silence of the abyss settled into the capsule. Then the metal began to groan a new sound, a deep, wet, buckling crunch. Abby felt the gravity in the pod shift as the entity began to contract, slowly, methodically pulling the titanium sphere down into the dark, hollow warmth of the borehole.